the Bookstore Education Podcast, brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we're listening to Doing Well by Doing Good, Community Partnerships to Strengthen Your Network and Your Bottom Line, a session that was presented at Children's Institute 2022 in Phoenix.
Well, good morning. We're really happy that you came here to hear about doing well by doing good in community partnerships to strengthen your network and your bookstore. Before I forget, we'd like to thank Ingram for being the sponsor of this conference, and we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lupe Penn. I am the Youth and Schools Manager at Bookmarks in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We are first and foremost a nonprofit organization, so that's the bigger umbrella, and we have, of course, our independent bookstore that's a part of that, and our Festival of Books and Authors that we do every year. The organization started as a festival. We're going on our 17th year, volunteer-based, and has grown, and our bookstore turns 5 this year, so that's exciting, yes. We're having a birthday party and everything. And my role specifically focuses on community outreach. We're mission-based, so our focus is increasing access to books and cultivating community through encouraging positive social change through books that educate, inspire, challenge, and entertain. So everything that we do is seen through that lens. And I'll talk a little bit more about all the things that we do with the community.
So hello, I'm Verlene Singletary, and I own the Book Joint in Chicago. We've been in existence since 2007, but we were mainly online based, and we opened a physical location in November of last year. So we're just kind of moving our way around, and we're in the Bronzeville area of Chicago. I also have a nonprofit that is like a sister to the Book Joint, and that's Options for Literacy, because the area I'm in is considered a book desert. So our mission is to make sure that literacy gets into the hands of all of our babies.
Hi, I'm Laurie Gilman. I'm the owner of East City Bookshop, which is in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, right just a few blocks from the Capitol building. And we opened in 2016, and I'm the only person with just a straight for-profit bookstore who's in the group, we realized in our chats. But we still have, as part of our mission, to be a part of the community, and part of that's giving back. And I have lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, raised 3 kids, and have a lot of ties, and actually opened the bookstore, having never worked in a bookstore or anything, opened the bookstore because at that point there were no bookstores anywhere on our side of town. And a good community needs a bookstore, as you all know. So that was my reason for opening it in the first place. And my neighborhood means a lot to me, so it was a natural to always want to give back.
Thank you. My name's Jen Carr. I'm the children's book buyer at City of Asylum Books. And we're 6 years old with the bookstore, but the umbrella organization that we're under has been around for like 16, 17 years. And the City of Asylum began when Diane and Henry Reese wanted to do something after they heard a lecture by Salman Rushdie about international writers who were being persecuted. They were not safe. And they got an individual, Chuang Xiang, who was a poet, and he was a performance poet, and they got a house for him. And now there's a nearby alley, we're on the north side of Pittsburgh, where there's 6 or 7 houses, and we have 8 writers now from Cuba, Bangladesh, all different places. So the core of the bookstore is about translated books and international books and underrepresented voices. We also have general books as well. Now we're going to all go through and talk about what kinds of actions we take to be part of our community and do good in our with our bookstores.
Awesome. So one of the key takeaways is that that I want you guys to take away from this is that even though we're a nonprofit and there are some things that we can't do that for-profit stores can do, like we have to be very careful. We can't use like discounts and like the word sales and things like that. We want to be champions for literacy like everybody else does in here, right? But there are so many things that we do as a nonprofit that nothing is stopping you as a for-profit store to from doing those things. And doing something that we're not all very good at is bragging about it. You know, as booksellers, we want to save the world through books, and we're not always really good about talking about the good that we do. And I mean, we're not experts. I'm no expert by no means. I'm very new to the book industry. I get to marry my love of community outreach and my love of books, and I feel like I have the best job in the world. And so we try to do all the things. But there's nothing stopping you as a for-profit from doing things that we do as a nonprofit that will help benefit you. The other thing is, if you are saying yes to something, what are you saying no to? And vice versa. If you're saying no to something, what are you saying yes to? And we'll get into that. But some of the things that we do is, I started in October, and we also were going through a strategic plan as a nonprofit. Like, what is our mission? Why are we doing the things that we do? Are we just doing them because we've been doing them, or are we doing them because they have a purpose? So are you doing something for sales? Are you doing something for outreach? Are you doing something for impact? Like, when you're looking at, am I going to do this thing? What is my goal? And having that be very clear. So we started looking through that, and as I came on, we revamped Storytime. Storytime used to be every week because that's what we did. And some weeks, some Saturdays, it was like huge, and we had an author event, and we had crafts. And then other weeks, it was a volunteer reading to kids. Both great, but it kind of diluted the event. So I came in and said, what are we doing? What is our goal? What is our purpose with Storytime? And we decided that Storytime was an engagement opportunity. It was an opportunity for families to come in and unplug and engage with each other, centered around books. And so our goal is to introduce people to bookmarks, to bring them into the store. Of course, we do have to keep the store running, so sales are also a part of that, but it's not the focus, but it does follow. So now we do it once a month, and every story time has a community partner. So the first one we did was with the police department. They have a literacy initiative where they have something called the Sweet Reads truck, and it's like an ice cream truck, and they give ice cream and books to kids in communities. So we partnered with them. They also happen to have Paw Patrol characters. Needless to say, we had 150 people in our store. Wow. So it was incredible, and that kind of launched this revamp of what we think of when we think of Storytime. And so then we move on, and then we have LMI builders who helped build the store, came in and did the construction theme. We partnered with the local Crossnor, is a home for kids and families for foster care. And we did a celebration of all families. And most recently, we partnered with the Winston-Salem City Parks and Recs and did a playing outside story time. And then we partnered with our local pride organization for Drag Queen Storytime. And so all these things were very intentional. And for Drag Queen Storytime, we got some pushback, but of course they had the opposite effect, and we had hundreds of people at our store. So just thinking about what is my goal, what is my intention, and then everything else kind of follows. But you have to figure out what your specific purpose is for not just story time, but every event that you're doing. And I'll stop talking, sorry.
So to build off of that, you really need to know your community. You need to know who's in your community that you can partner with. Think about different organizations, the local school systems, and things like that, and see what can you guys do to work together. Also, what kind of programs can you two offer together? Are you going to serve your targeted community the way you want to do. So like for the book joint, we're putting together a book fair. So what we're going to do with this book fair is we're going to work with some of the local nonprofit organizations, and we're going to give out free books to the kids. We're going to give out free school supply bags and things like that. And so it's beneficial to the community, of course, because these kids get the needed resources, but it's also beneficial to that organization that's working with us because they get to spend those dollars that are allocated towards that. And plus they get that recognition and I guess the social works that they need. And then you also need to think about when you're planning these events, like she said, like Lupe said, what is your purpose? What is your goal? What are you trying to do when you're putting this event together? Who are you looking to reach? What are you trying to do? So you just have to do a lot of research and a lot of thinking when you're starting to try to establish these partnerships.
And just to try to build on those things, because that is the research and making connections and figuring out what makes sense is that those are the basic things that you want to do. And sometimes you might have to try something that seems like it would make sense, and then it turns out it doesn't really. But that's okay. That's the way it goes. You're just making more, relationships and connections that way in the community. But it's not always things that seem obvious. I mean, we talked a lot when we were talking about this, about the partnering with the police department, and they're in a very particular situation where that worked really well. Mm-hmm. And you might have things that make a lot of sense within your community that, some other community would be like, oh, that would never happen in our community. Mm-hmm. So don't just think of the things that immediately come to mind. And also you can look at them a little differently. One thing, when I did work in our neighborhood in a nonprofit doing fundraising, so I have sort of that outlook as well. And I was really happy to not be in a nonprofit and be asking people for money to make the place go, but to have something to sell them. However, there is always that part of me and of a lot of people in our neighborhood and customer base that want to try to, bring in more people, bring in more resources. And as a business, of course, you can't just ask people for donations. That is not legal. So you can be a pass-through. But when I finally realized, we're just a little bit of background. This neighborhood, since I've been there for 30 years, has changed dramatically, and it is now so affluent that I do not know where these people come from. But they do buy a lot of books, so that's a plus. But it's a very different kind of neighborhood. A lot of people have gotten pushed out, further and further out, and all of those things are just not, that is not great. And so we try to bring in everybody who wants to be part of the community. And I realized, there are a lot of people here who don't think twice about buying 5 books, 5 hardcover books. They can buy more books. So we just started having, we would have an author event with a kids author or a middle grade author that kids are really excited about. We just had our customers buy 2 books instead of 1 for the event, so that we could give one to everybody who wanted one but couldn't afford it. And we just sort of put it out there, and people did it. So I was like, okay, well, that was easy. Ask, and you shall receive. So we, one of the things we do that's really effective, that seems like nothing, is we set up book drives. We have done a lot of partnering with, especially since the pandemic, with an organization that's part of our Ward 6 Mutual Aid Fund, and it's called Serve Your City. They do amazing programming right in our area and the larger, neighborhoods around us, and we set up book drives for them, kind of advise on what books we think the kids would like, set it up on our website, advertise it, and people just purchase books. And so we get tons of books that we put into their, we did backpacks for the back to school. Kids get free backpacks full of school supplies. We were able to put books in there not because we were donating them, because that would be a whole other arm of business, but because our customers are buying them. And we have had at least twice for a big book drive one customer different customer who came in and said, I'll just buy the rest of the books that you need for the list. Because people do want to do something often, and sometimes giving money is the thing they have time to do, and that works. So we also do things like offer space. Space is kind of in demand in our area, and because it's an old historic neighborhood, so we will give people a meeting space if we can. And those are the things that are very easy, and they may or may not come back around to you. But one example, just to hold out there, is something amazing, is for years, we have given space to an organization called Reading Partners that trains volunteers to tutor kids in schools with their reading. So we just gave them space in our lounge area every other week for a couple of hours, and they would train their volunteers there. And last summer, they bought $26,000 worth of books from us. Completely out. We had no idea that they were even a place that would purchase that many books. But yeah, so that was exciting. So those kinds of things, what I would say is I'm constantly trying to, you have to judge, okay, is this going to end up taking so much time that it's taking away from my actual business, so that I, won't be successful to be able to do these things. But if it's something that is relatively easy, that it's not going to take a whole bunch of staff time, and it makes someone else's, job and life and mission easier, then yes, of course we'll do that. And sometimes the payoff is really great.
I'm going to loop back to what Lupe said about bragging. So the City of Asylum, we have a lot of supporters for our writers, and we have music and different events, literary events. So we have a base that existed way before us. And so letting the community know that we're for freedom of speech, underrepresented voices, is just bragging about what we do well, championing our writers, getting their work out there in the community, letting them speak, and just letting people know who we are. And I suggest that's a really good way to get started, to identify your goals and let the community know that those are your goals in whatever way that you can. So for example, we've been really lucky. I'm kind of hesitant to tell you that our staff is 1.5 people, and we're not a tiny bookstore. And so we don't go out into the community and do some of the great work, that we just don't have the staff. But what we do have is people know us, and so the JCC social justice groups come to us for their refugees. Every year they wanted to give books to their kids for their newly arrived refugees from Syria or from whatever country, and they bought all their books through us, or we have a wish list through different places like that. And just as in so we get a lot of wish lists from the Perry High School, which is real near us, which is an underserved high school. They do their wish list through us. And so that's a great way for us, so that our people who support the writers will also support our community. So we're sort of sharing that. And then also, speaking of community, we had a yard sale and in our community, huge multi-block yard sale. And just to jump in, this was it's not really doing good. It's just being part of your community, identifying yourself, dollar books and giving away stuff. So that's a pretty obvious thing you probably already do. But like what happened with Lori, many years later, or maybe 6 months later, it will be a connection. So with that, Lupe, can you tell us a little bit more about your partnerships, or maybe a specific one going into it, some of the things that you figured out ahead of time, or pitfalls or things to notice when you're entering in with another group, what you want to make clear, or how it goes, or tell us a story.
Absolutely. So for us, there are some obvious partnerships, and I think for everybody, like the schools, we want to make sure that we have great partnerships with the schools. Our media coordinators are are champions of literacy, and we want to make sure that we're there for them to support them. other organizations, anybody that has something to do with literacy or serving the community. And then there are those not so obvious. Just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean we don't partner with for-profit organizations. So we have something called Book with Purpose, and so we do a community-wide read. We donate 3,000 books to the community. Last year it was on anti-racism. So we donated from Anti-Racist Baby, which has been a popular book this week, and Anti-Racist Baby, all the way up to How to Be an Anti-Racist. So like Stand from the Beginning. And so we had organizations that said, yes, we're going to have a conversation. We need 30 books. We donated a copy, the age-appropriate copy, to every school and every public library in our county. And that's with support from the community. And going back to the bragging, we post that in our store because we have customers who just see us as a bookstore. We have people who just know us for a festival, and then we have people who know all the things that we do, and we kind of want to make sure that those things that we educate the people on all the things that we do. So kind of like shelf talkers, we have like, did you know that Bookmarks donated X amount of books in 2021? And there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Like how much money did you save the schools with the discounts that you gave? How many books did you give away? How many hours of safe space did you provide? So those are very obvious things. But then with the Book with Purpose, this year we're focusing on mental health. So one of the things that we're doing is we're partnering with a small business called Patiently Rooted. So she does plants. And so we're doing like a workshop. And so this one is a ticketed event. Our events are either at no cost. We don't like the word free because it's not free. We still have our time. So language is very important. So we say at no cost. Pay what you can, ticketed events, and then events that if you buy the book, it gives you access to the event. So this one is a ticketed, but it's very intentional. It's part of our conversation. We're not leading it, we're just creating a space for it. And then we're partnering with this small business that's doing something that matches that event. So, I'm sorry, I keep talking, I'm like, okay. So one of the things with the partnerships is you have to have clear expectations. So once you make that connection or you say, why is this important to me? I've identified somebody I want to partner with. I've reached out and we're meeting. You want to make sure that you go in, something again that we can be very bad at is boundaries. Because we want to do all the things, we want to go to war for literacy and we want to do everything, right? But then again, if you say yes to this, what are you saying no to? Because in order to do all the things that give us all the good feelings and all the mushy stuff, you have to do the hard stuff. And so if you're saying yes to everything and you're stretching yourself thin, are you going to be able to do the things necessary to keep moving your mission forward or keep your doors open so you can have a safe space for everyone? So making sure you focus on that and set expectations. Expectations are very important. For us, I'm very clear, like this is the date. Are you going to be there? This is what I'm going to provide. This is what I need you to provide. And we kind of negotiate that. Clear boundaries and responsibilities. Are you going to promote the event as much as I am? We are fortunate enough to have a bigger staff, and so we have a communications coordinator who helps with like graphics and social media and things like that. So we make sure that, are you going to share it on your platforms like we are? And everything doesn't always go great. We've been very fortunate that things have gone really well, but recently with the Drag Queen Storytime, we went in thinking all these expectations. And the organization that we work with, we were on the same page, but that organization can be a little neutral, and nobody should be surprised that we had Drag Queen Storytime. If you know us, you know what we stand for: inclusion, every story, every voice. And so there was a little pushback from one group in the community, I'll be honest, and so they started getting calls, the partner, and they said, can you take our logo off the graphic? And we were disappointed, but we respected it, and so we did. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes people aren't ready, and we were like, we weren't giving those people, the people that were giving us pushback. They said they were going to protest, had the opposite effect. We had counter protesters, and it was the most beautiful, colorful scene. You have ever seen. They made a runway to drown out the noise. There was 5 protesters that showed up. We had like 200 people outside, 150 people inside. And they were, every time a family walked through the runway, they had bubbles and cheering and signs like, we love you. And so those, just doing good things, people are going to remember that. And I know I keep going back and forth, but, you know, bragging is important, because when I think about where I'm going to spend my money and my time, I'm going to think about supporting those businesses, whether it's nonprofit or not, that are doing the things that I want in the community, that are helping to make the world, my community, look the way that I feel like it should, or that everybody should feel welcome. And so people are going to remember those things. So setting clear expectations and knowing that everybody's not always going to be on the same page, but the more that you can have that ahead of time, the less you're going to have that headache in the back end.
So, okay, I'm going to go to the more boring part.
No bubbles, huh?
No bubbles, no bubbles. So I'm just going to talk about establishing these partnerships. You can't be afraid to have that conversation with the people who want to talk to you about what you're doing and what you're trying to do. Because you would be surprised at what that person's position is in whatever company or organization they work for, or what they even have the ability to do. I was talking to one of my customers, and we were just like discussing the store when I'm talking about doing what my plans are. She owns a transportation business. She wrote us a check for $5,000. And she was just like, here, I want to seed into your program. So have those conversations, because you never know what those conversations will net you. So many times I've just talked to people about things we're doing and what we want to do and what we're trying to do, and they connect me with different organizations or different companies that they want to work with us, they want to order from us, or they just want to support us. So that's what you're going to have to do when you get back. Just like she said, brag. Talk your store up. Tell them what you're trying to do. Talk about these partnerships that you want to establish. Like we said about the school system is awesome, but it also depends on where you live. Mm-hmm. Because if you live in a big city, sometimes getting connected with that school takes a lot of work. Because like I'm in Chicago Public Schools, you have to become a vendor. In order to become a vendor, mm-hmm. you have to have a school recommend you. So that means you're going to have a conversation with some of those schools mm-hmm. to let them know what you're doing and have them talk you up. And it's a process. It's a lengthy process. But once it's all over and done with, it's worth it, because then you're in their system and any school can order from you. So it ends up working out. If you're in a smaller town, it may be easier. You may be able to, or even a suburb, you may just be able to talk to their curriculum director and go from there. But just make sure you have those conversations, make those phone calls. I wouldn't recommend emails, because emails are never answered. So you're just gonna have to just suck it up and get on the phone. Or just go and get in their face. Go walk into the school. Here, let me give you some information about what we're doing. Here's my business card, and let's work together.
Can I add something to that? I'm so sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to forget. And sometimes you don't have to go to the school system directly. We have something called Educator Night. And you can do it in a different way, but we invite educators to come. We give them things. I asked publishers, hey, we're having educators. Can you send us things? And they sent us goodie treats that we could put in goodie bags. And then those educators are so appreciative, because they're so underpaid and so overworked that they love when it's intentional. And so we have educators that's media coordinators, administrators, everybody. And so just, you don't have to go through anybody, and then they will be your champion. They will be somebody who say, look at what the store is doing for us. We need them here. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
How long did it take you to get signed up with your schools?
I'm sorry.
How long did that process take?
Honestly, getting a vendor number with CPS, that process probably took about 6 months. So it's a long process, because it's a lot of back and forth, because when you think about how huge the school is, it's on one person's desk. Somebody else is the person you need to talk to. So you just really, really have to just keep on pushing just to make that happen and get through it.
And we are not a vendor from the school system. and we still get, because they can't use Title I funds with us, but they can use other funds, but the PTA can spend money with us. So just because it's a no, is it really a no? So there's ways.
Yeah, that's what we, in DC, we have not managed to get signed up as a vendor. It keeps it someone's project, and then when they hit all those roadblocks, it kind of gets put on the back burner. But we have managed to, we work with a lot of PTAs, and we also have in DC a lot of public charter schools, and they spend their money differently, so they don't have to go with approved vendors. And we also have just kind of in our area a lot of parochial schools and private schools. We have probably a dozen elementary schools within just about a mile and a half of us. And so it can be a little confusing because we work with them all in a little different way, but it is certainly very much worth the time. And we do have an educator night, so we keep making those connections with teachers. And it took a long time because we hadn't had in our neighborhood a bookstore that really reached out and worked with schools. And it was sort of like we had to educate the schools about what we could actually do. And I feel like that was a good 6 months process, at least, just to sort of say, we're here and we do these things. So patience is important with schools.
Related to both of your comments now. Who do you reach out to get swag for? Like, is it your reps, or is it someone else within the publishers, or your teacher nights? What do you do at those teacher nights, and what are you telling the school districts you can do for them?
So, yes. All the questions. Okay, so yeah, it is the reps. And like I said, I'm fairly new. I started this role in October, so a lot of it is like, hey, who do I email? So I focus a lot. I rely a lot on my leadership and just say. But it was her idea. She's like, tell the reps that you're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, they're up.
What was the other question?
When you host a teacher night, what are you doing at that teacher night? Are you offering a discount? Are you giving cocktails? Like, what's going on?
So I can't use the word discount, but we're just saying it was a celebration. We actually, and then I write the event grids for the kids, and so we invited an author. So Jillian McDunn, who's here, came to us. She did school visits with us, and we were able to donate books so that every educator got a copy of her book, but and if you can't do that, that's okay. They're still sharing time and space with an author, which is invaluable. And then we had an organization donate dessert, and then we purchased like other things. One of our board members owns a winery, so we had wine. So again, not obvious partnerships, but you can, make it work. And so we had a lot of people that support us, and we rely a lot on volunteers. So we had volunteers there. So they got a swag bag, they got to hang out, and they were just happy to do that. And again, it's the return on investment. What are you willing to invest? So it's whatever you're wanting to invest. Is it your time? Is it books? Whatever it is. We actually gave away what we call a dash and grab. And so we did raffles. And one of the raffles was a teacher got to take 90 seconds to grab as many books as she could. It was amazing. And the teacher that won was a special education teacher. And it was just the most amazing thing. And so we got to do that. And we actually had a rep from Macmillan there, and she was highlighting books, and she gave all those books away. So use the resources that you have, but then think about those things that you haven't thought about. And when you go to an organization and say, hey, I'm doing this for teachers, don't you love teachers? Guilt them into giving you things. And so things like that, to them, it's just, they're excited that you're celebrating them.
Okay. And then for you, when you're approaching school districts, trying to build that relationship and buying books for them, what are you telling them are some of your, what can you do for them? How do you pitch yourself?
Oh, that is, that was a big question for a while. What are we doing for them? And some of it is just knowing about more recent books. Yeah. When a teacher gives you a list and half the books are out of print, you're like, I might need to update this a little bit. So we also do educator nights, and one of the things we do, besides giving swag, which is always popular, and wine, always good, is talking about the either very recent releases or upcoming books. You know, the Children's Buyer will talk about what they're really excited about and what they think is going to really connect with certain ages of kids. So that's a popular thing. And then one thing that we can do, and this is very much applicable to like working with our neighborhood private school or one of the nearby public charter schools, because the bureaucracy is less, we can drop off an order that they put in. You know, like we'll just drive it over there and give it to them, and not having to worry about Amazon's, let's say, that place but you know, that people got really used to using if they needed something in a hurry, but then like getting it delivered and getting any sort of customer service. And once we can kind of get someone in, we do discount, you know, every school gets a 10% discount, educators get a 10% discount if they sign up anytime for our educator program. And so they get enough of a discount that makes it worthwhile, and then they get extra customer service, us following up to make sure something gets there in time, you know, just things that you do for any customer. And once schools experience it, they generally are like, oh yeah, I forgot about this customer service thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to add on that. They enjoy that personalized experience. So they have somebody that can refer books to them. They have someone that they can ask questions about. So what do you know? What's new out? What's coming out? I need a book that's based on, let's say, sports or something like that. So whatever they're looking for, you can actually give them a personalized recommendation that'll fit their school. So that's something that they really enjoy and that they look for.
And one thing that we've discovered too and one thing that is kind of challenging about working with schools is the whole way you work with them and the dynamic can change when one person leaves the school. But if that's just kind of part of it. But we have a number of schools that have very active school librarians or one of their language arts teachers, and they will have book clubs. And we have worked with book clubs at schools individually and had authors come to talk with the kids at those book clubs. And we've gotten books. Sometimes we can get them from publishers, or maybe ARCs from publishers to give to all the kids, so that there's no question of can you buy it, can you not afford it, you know. And those are the kids who are really excited about reading and writing, and those are the kids we want to, you know, really work with. So they're out there at a lot of schools, but it does sometimes it's just chance that you find the person. But if some of our schools don't have librarians, but if there's a good school librarian, that's often a really good place to start.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about not so obvious partnerships. So sometimes just culling your own interests. This is very obvious, and just nod and pretend it's new to you. But for example, I took a course in the National Council for Teaching of Asia. We have a lot of universities around us, and this is just a small thing, but it turned into something really big. And I took like a book club, online book club during the pandemic with it, and I got back my email, and I knew the man because I took the whole course with him, who told me, get your book from Amazon. And then I was on the phone with him about something else. I said, have you ever thought of using an independent bookstore? And then like 2 weeks later, now they get all their books for their students that they mail everywhere. So, I mean, that's not actually doing good, but they know that we are good. And what our mission is, and since we bragged about our mission, they want to jump on board and say, you know, to support us. So that's one thing. So think of your own life and some connections you have. Sometimes it's not like the big school that you're going to get. It might just be some department of a university or one librarian that you know. So of course that's obvious. But I hate to be the big downer too. But we're gonna talk. Oh, before questions, I was just gonna say one other thing that too is to research your partnerships, and not just the obvious ways. Word of mouth. Make sure. We almost went in a partnership, and I'm not going to be specific for obvious reasons, but the group was not being inclusive, and so we pulled out. And actually, all the bookstores in our city met and pulled out of it because they did not invite we're not diverse. And so we said, no way. And it was like, okay, the return on investment, that would have been really good financially, but who are we? We don't want to do that. So it wasn't obvious. You had to look to find it. Yeah, so that was my big downer. So does anyone else have anything to add before we go to questions?
I wanted to add one thing about something that we do for teachers that is easy. We do comp tickets for educators for big events. So we've had like Emily St. John Mandel, Chelsea Clinton, James Patterson. And so when we have those big things, we're like, okay, we're going to have 50 tickets that are for educators. And we send it out and say, sign up this way. And sometimes that just makes that they've never heard of us. And they're like, oh, I heard that I could get a free ticket. And I'm an educator. And they go to that. And it doesn't have to be big, huge events like that. It could be like we're inviting teachers to, something that makes sense for you. So that's an investment for you because now you're making a connection that maybe you didn't have before. I had another, wish lists. If you have an educator night or you just know teachers, they can have a wish list and people can, get their books for the classroom through you. You know how we do shelf talkers. You could say, this is Miss Jones' second grade class on Miss Jones' second grade class wish list. And then they'll buy that book with like, oh, that's where my nephew goes or my child, or I just love that you have that. So that's something that's small and it doesn't take a lot of investment on time and it can make a big impact. I'm done.
Okay.
I have a question about the comp tickets. Does that include the book or is it just to come?
It depends on the event. Most of the time it doesn't, but it depends on if we've had it sponsored and we have books that we can, because we still have to, make sure that our So yes, they do. And so it just depends on the event. And it's very clearly defined, like this is just for the event, not the book. And then if we do have big events like that, we give people who are buying tickets the opportunity to buy an extra book for somebody that, for an educator or a classroom. And when we do author visits too, when we have the order form, I just recently added a little box that says buy a second copy for a friend or the school. And that has made a huge difference. It's just very small things that we can do to just add it. And the worst they can say is no or not check it, but it's there. And maybe they hadn't thought about it and now they do. And I've had a lot of families order extra books because of that. Especially if you're trying to meet a book minimum, that helps.
We've also had, we've partnered with other small businesses to have the business purchase books for like one of the book clubs at a school that I was talking about that has the author coming, to just purchase all the books for every kid in the book club. And then we advertise them and they get, that happy feel-good glow and everybody's happy.
The other thing that I would suggest, if you're donating any books or offering anything, put a sticker in it. We put a sticker in it that says, this is a gift from Bookmarks. We're a literary art nonprofit and it has our information. So any book that leaves as a gift or something like that, it has that. If we give away galleys, we also have a little free library community, and so people can register it. And our volunteers go around and make sure that they're stocked, but everything goes out with a sticker that says where it came from.
Is that bad?
I have a pretty maybe obvious question. When you do the teacher events, do you do them like at the beginning of school, or the summer before school starts, or in the spring, or after?
We've tried different times. And honestly, we haven't found a particular time that's lots better than another. We did, I think probably the most successful thing we did, and I'm sure it's different in every town, but we did like an August one, and then we did an October one. And so we kind of between those two, we had a really good cross-section of people.
We do one in the fall and one in the spring. Any other questions?
Expanding on what people are kind of jumping in on, and also your guys' sets of knowledge. So we've heard schools, hospitals. What are some of the other organizations that I'm not thinking about who are buying books in my community? Universities, I'm aware of, different departments. But does anyone have? I guess I'm unaware of who's out there buying books.
Well, there's other nonprofit groups like the JCC refugee group, the anti-racist group, the social, like the nonprofits that are doing the same work that we're doing. Martin Luther King pop-up, we did a pop-up for their big events. Like, that's a little different than we did, yeah. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to expand. One of the ones that I know about when we're working at our store is our local county sheriff's office for the prison system. They come through a couple times a year and shop before we open with just those big blue rolling bins, take every used sale book off our shelves and wipe it clean.
Wow. That's awesome.
Could you say the group name? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Our prison or
The prison system.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And another one, we get requests from like some big corporations for their book clubs. We've worked with Microsoft. We've also worked with Groupon. When they have their book clubs, they come through our store and they order from us. So it's good to make a connection with big companies like that too, because they will definitely buy from you.
So you reach out to them and say, like, does your corporation run a book club? Are you soliciting that information?
Well, I got lucky. Like I said, those conversations you have to have.
Yeah.
So
It's
I was
really
speaking with
connections.
someone who works for Groupon, and that's how we got that connection going. So like I said, you just have to have those conversations with people.
And
It's
you
a
never,
lot of word of mouth on
Yeah.
those kind of things. Like, you don't realize that,
A reader has a good experience in your store.
Yes.
this
Right.
business, you should be buying your book.
yep.
yes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's our
You're
goal.
just talking like time of day, and then it turns into what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, it's more opening channels of communication and bragging.
Bragging. You want to, for us, we want to be the go-to. Like when you think of literacy, you're gonna think of Bookmarks in Winston-Salem. Like we went to the library's summer reading kickoff. We had a pop-up at it's called Poppy Seed Provision. So it's like a little bar with a market. And we had a adult book fair. Yes, books and alcohol, and not for the kids though. But like just being out there and being visible and posting on social media, like this is where we are, this is what we did. We posted something because we invited educators. We had a donor who said, here's some money to give to media coordinators, and we invited them to shop. And then we learned our state standard for books and media centers is 10 per student, and some schools were as low as 2. And all we did was post, hey, did you know this is the state standard for number of books per student? And some schools have 2. And from that, we just had people saying, how can I buy books and for schools, or sending us money, or, on those wish lists that you guys can do as well.
So as well as bragging, you're educating people
Yes.
about what you are and what your community is too. So it's not just you, the
Yeah.
bookstore, it's what you care about.
And bragging
I
in a
think
very
the
intentional
woman-
way.
There's someone right here too.
Oh, go ahead. In that.
Yeah.
You know, like kids do this, they do it. Thank you so much. And but with middle school and high schoolers, do you guys reach out programs for that age group?
I do a middle grade book club and an ARC, but it's not like huge.
We have 2 middle grade book clubs and then a teen ARC club. And they have good steady,
Do you reach out to like the schools and look at it there?
yeah, again, through the school librarians, we would start to get, and then just our customer base as well. And it is much harder just because people's schedules get so much busier the older they get. So it can, I think that you have to adjust your expectation down a little bit.
For us, Storytime is marketed for kids aged 3 to 7, but we also say we have activities for the whole family. So the intention is that the family comes together, centered around books, knowing that there's going to be activities for everybody to do. So when we did like the construction theme Storytime, we had like Legos, and we had coloring. Everybody got a hard hat. But then we had an activity for the family to create a tower using spaghetti and marshmallows. So that was more of like a team, effort. And so it's just doing those things where anybody could enjoy it. With the city recreations and parks, we had a pop-up playground. So we had all these like giant checkers and Connect 4 and a soccer goals, frisbees, all these things, and we read books under a big tree. And everybody enjoyed that. And then for when it comes to like middle and YA, I'm starting what we call a teen advisory council. And so we can give galleys to the kids and they do reviews, and we're going to start putting them in the store. And so then they're going to be like, oh, like I wrote that review, or my friend wrote that review, or somebody in my age wrote that review. And then they can earn book credit, or, and when we meet, I give them pizza. So like, it just depends on what you want to do, but it's very new for me. I haven't been in this role that long, so I'm still trying to figure out what works, but just being intentional about the age group, but it's a family thing for story time.
Agreed.
Well, thank you so much for coming to our conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
I want to add one thing.
Thank you for listening to the Bookstore Education Podcast, brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!